Hello everyone. Our today's topic is fixed capital. Before this, we have completed capital structure, and the last topic of this lesson is fixed capital and working capital. First of all, we'll be talking about fixed capital and then we'll be learning about working capital. So, fixed capital. What is capital? First of all, we should learn what is capital. Capital is money invested in business is called capital. Money invested in business is called capital. And this money invested may be in fixed assets or in current assets. When money is invested in fixed assets, so if money will be invested in fixed assets in business organization, always investment is for long term period and long term investment will be there. And that is why investment in fixed assets, that is what is called capital budgeting decisions. Fixed assets is capital budgeting decisions. So what is fixed capital? The capital invested in fixed assets for long term period is fixed capital. And once the capital is invested in fixed assets for long term period, it affects the growth, profitability and risk of business for long term. This is very, very important. And always fixed assets should be financed through long term sources. Fixed assets are never financed from short term sources. It is financed always from long term sources. And fixed assets remains fixed in the organization for long term period. That is why it is called fixed assets. When we say long term period, it means greater than 1 year period. That is what is long term period. And that is why the capital which is invested in fixed assets for more than 1 year period, that remains invested in the business for getting longer term returns and also the profits. That is why it is said to be fixed capital. The capital is committed for long term period. Now there are various factors affecting the requirement of fixed capital in a business organization. Before that, we will understand first of all what is the importance of management of fixed capital. Why is there need for managing fixed capital properly in the organization, or management of investment in fixed assets, which is also called capital budgeting decisions. Why is in exams you may be asked, what is the importance of capital budgeting decisions in any organization, or what is the importance of management of fixed capital in an organization, or why it is important. First of all, why it is important? Because fixed capital, it affects the long term growth and return. Whenever the investment in fixed assets is done, it is done with an expectation that returns will come in future, first of all, and always expecting growth in future. That is why the investment is done in such huge amount and the fund is committed for such longer period of time. So very wisely the decision has to be taken. Second is, large amount of funds is involved. Always when we talk about investment in fixed assets is costly, because huge funds is involved in the purchase of fixed assets. That is why how the funds have to be procured from different sources and in what proportion the analysis should properly be done before raising the funds. Then only we can see that the business is going to get the fund from the cheapest source after proper analysis and calculation, and it will be in a position to utilize the fund in a proper way to get good returns which the company expects. Third is the risk involved. Once the fund that has been raised and it has been committed for such long period of time by investing in fixed assets, we see that huge amount of risk is involved. Risk is involved in raising funds and committing it with an expectation to get returns in future, and that is why it affects overall business risk. This decision will affect overall business risk for long term period, and the decision has to be taken, that is why, very wisely. And fourth is irreversible decision. Whenever capital budgeting decision or investment in fixed assets have to be done, always such decisions, they are irreversible, because if investment has been done already and then the decision is taken back, then it is always huge loss to the organization. So before taking decision, proper analysis has to be done, and then only this decision is to be taken. Otherwise, the organization and its operations is going to suffer at huge cost. So in this way, we have learned about the importance of management of fixed capital or capital budgeting decisions. Next, we will be learning about the factors affecting the requirement of fixed capital in any organization. The first factor is the nature of business. Nature of business or type of business. business may be trading or manufacturing business. If it is trading business, it always has less requirement of fixed capital because there is no requirement of plant and machinery in case of trading business. So, no investment in fixed assets. Whereas in manufacturing organization, there is always greater requirement of fixed capital because greater investment in fixed assets or plant and machinery is there. Then is the scale of operations. On the basis of scale of operations also, the requirement of fixed capital is decided. If an organization is operating on higher scale, then there will be greater requirement of fixed capital. It is operating on higher scale because of greater demands, and to meet those demands it will have to have greater investment in fixed assets like plant and machinery. Whereas if the operations are small, then always we see that there is less requirement of fixed capital because less investment in fixed assets. Generally, big organizations, we see that they operate on higher scale and they require more amount of fixed capital. Third is the choice of technique. Technique adopted by the organization may be capital intensive technique or it may be labor intensive. If it is capital intensive technique, that means more of capital and less of labor is used. And here we see that there will be greater requirement of fixed capital because more machines will be there. In case of labor intensive technique, we see that there will be more labor and less capital, so less fixed capital because less investment in plant and machine will be there. Growth prospects. Companies which are having higher growth prospects will require greater fixed capital because if its expectation is there that its products demand is going to rise, then it will have to meet the expectations only by investing in greater investment in fixed assets. Whereas if the growth prospects are low, then we see that less fixed capital because less investment in fixed assets. Diversification. If the company has to diversify in different products, then greater fixed capital because according to the diversification, more investment in fixed assets will be required, and that is why we see that company will need more of fixed capital. For example, if the company is presently dealing in cosmetics and wants to diversify its operation and start leather products manufacturing also, then it will have to make arrangement of the tools, equipments, machines, whatever is required to see that the production takes place. So greater is the diversification, more is the requirement of fixed capital, and vice versa, you may say. Financial alternatives. If there is financial alternative in the form of leasing facility, sometimes it is available, then less fixed capital will be required, because the company will only have to make arrangement for the lease rentals and it will not have to purchase the fixed assets which is required in the operation of the business. But if there is no financial alternatives available, there is no leasing facility available, then the company will have to make outright purchase of the fixed assets which is required for the operation of the business, and that is why there will be more requirement of fixed capital. But generally this leasing facility or financial alternative, that is suitable only in case of high risk lines of business, where we see that there is possibility of change to take place every now and then in business, where the business will not like to invest in such huge amount. So in that case it is suitable. Technological upgradation. Greater is the technological upgradation. That means the technology becomes obsolete. Sooner, there will be more requirement of fixed capital and vice versa. In business operations, where we see that technology very soon becomes old and newer techniques, they come into operation, there we see that there is more requirement of updation, requirement of updating technology, and that requires more fixed capital. For example, computer business, where we see that greater technological upgradation is required from time to time, and that will require more fixed capital. Last is the level of collaboration. If the level of collaboration is high between two companies, if two companies they decide to share their assets, only on the condition that they are unable to make full use of the facility or the assets in which they have invested, then they can collaborate so that together they can invest on it, or they can make use and provide benefit to the others. So higher is the level of collaboration, less will be the requirement of fixed capital and vice versa. Example, if two companies, two banks, for example, banking companies, they decide to share ATM facilities because they are unable to make full use of the facility and they are ready to collaborate with each other, then we will see that always the requirement of fixed capital will be more, because sharing of the assets will be done with this collaboration. And in this way we see that because the scale of operation of a company is not to that much scale, that it is able to make use of that asset completely. That is why it is collaborating with some other company, so that it doesn't prove itself to be in loss. And in this way we see that the fixed capital requirements of each and every company differs, and keeping in mind these factors, they have to take these decisions. With this we have completed the fixed capital part. In our next lecture we will be learning about the working capital, and that will be the last topic of this lesson: working capital and factors affecting working capital requirement needs. Till then, thank you.